Hello everyone, my name is William Banks, and in 2008 I was about 9 years old, and my mom took me to the voting booth with her during the Obama and McCain election. I was so fascinated watching her check the little boxes on the candidates' names, and I had no idea who they were or what they stood for, but yet I was so fascinated with it. Voting is an important part of being a citizen. Voting is based on the ideas that the United States was founded on. And many people have fought for the equal right to vote regardless of race or sex. The 15th Amendment says that the right of the citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude, and it was ratified on February 3rd, 1870. And although people have the constitutional right to vote, many states try to stop minorities from voting. They used what are called literacy tests to stop and segregate the voters. So the white males were given very easy literacy tests, which were just like an article out of the newspaper, while the minorities were given very hard, very tricky literacy tests. And to put this into perspective, it'd be like asking you to draw a picture of a flower and then asking the person next to you to draw a perfect recreation of the Mona Lisa by Leonardo da Vinci. The 15th Amendment was a step closer to equal voting rights, but it still only applied to the male voters. In the early 1800s, women began planning, organizing, protesting, and petitioning for the right to vote. In 1848, Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott organized the first Women's Rights Convention in Seneca Falls, New York, which started the national movement for women's voting rights. In 1920, the 19th Amendment was ratified, and it states that the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. In 1965, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or NSCC, had organized a peaceful protest in Selma, Alabama, and they planned to march towards Montgomery, Alabama for equal voting rights. During this march, state troopers were ordered by Governor George Wallace to, quote, use whatever measure are necessary to prevent a march. The troopers refused to talk to the leaders of the march and advanced on the marchers. The troopers used tear gas, baton sticks, clubs, whips, and rubber tubing wrapped with barbed wire. While the marchers did not fight back, they were pushed back, and the entire event was captured on video and is now called Bloody Sunday. And it wouldn't be until 5 months after this event that Congress would enact the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which banned the use of literacy tests and allowed the government to provide oversight in areas where less than 50% of minorities were registered to vote. And by the end of 1965, over 250,000 African Americans were newly registered to vote. One of these marchers from Bloody Sunday was African American chairman of the NSCC, John Lewis. Now, John Lewis was born in 1940 in segregated Alabama. When he was 21, he took part of these sitting in white reserved seats on interstate buses called Freedom Rides in 1961. He would go on to lead many other civil rights movement activities, including the Acts of Bloody Sunday in 1965. And he would then continue to fight for civil rights, and he is now currently a congressman for Georgia. And this is all thanks to a biography done by John Lewis, or done on John Lewis. So great, everyone can vote now. So how does voter turnout look? Well, voter turnout is of the registered voters, how many of them actually go to the polls and vote? Well, the 1920 and the 1924 elections, the two elections right after the 19th Amendment was ratified, were actually the two lowest turnout rates for voters. And although the 1924 was the overall lowest turnout rate, it was actually the first election where the total number of women voters was higher than the total number of male voters. As of more recently, voter turnout rate seems to be on the rise, as the highest was in 2008, in which about 65% of the eligible voters took part in the election, and 61.5% of total voters were female. Though, according to Pew Research Center, the U.S. placed 26 out of 32 in voter turnout rate among other democratic countries. In the most recent presidential election in 2016, the overall voter turnout rate was 61.4%, which was actually the lowest since 2004. And the first time in over 20 years, the black voter turnout rate actually declined. But among women, it stayed roughly the same. The Washington Post says that many students haven't voted because they simply just don't know how to. And according to the Campus Current, which is done here at the community college, about 80% of students plan on voting in this past election. And that goes along with the Tufts University study that shows that there's an increase among college students in voting. Voting has been shown to be a very important part of American history, and American voters have shown that just because they've registered to vote doesn't mean that they're actually going to vote. And as Abraham Lincoln once said, elections belong to the people. It's their decision. If they decide to turn their back on the fire and burn their behinds, then they're just going to have to sit on the blisters.